Hey guys, Kirk here, and you're listening to episode number 4 of the Technobabble podcast in memory of Leonard Nimoy. Yesterday, February 27th, 2015, the world lost a great man, an iconic man, a man that has impacted so many lives during his 83 years with us. We all know Leonard Nimoy as the actor who portrayed Mr. Spock on the television series Star Trek, the original series, from 1966 to 1969. But he was, of course, more than that. He was a director, a photographer, an author, a husband, a father, and he was even a musician. He was so many things to so many people. And today, I just wanted to sit down and talk with an old friend of mine about who Nimoy was to us. I'm here with an old friend of mine, James. How you doing, James?
Pretty good. Thank you.
Yeah, man. It's been a long time since we've talked. Quite a long time. What have you been up to?
Working hard and doing all the things that life gets in the way, and having fun with.
Yeah, I'm there with you on that. Actually, I was thinking about, okay, first of all, the name I go by online is Captain Kirk, or Kirk for short. And when I heard that, Leonard Nimoy died, well, for one, he's, like I said, he's such a inspiration to everyone. But being Captain Kirk, I felt almost obligated. I had to, at least do something in memory of him. When we first started talking together, or talking and hanging out and working together, was in 2008, I believe it was, or 2009.
Somewhere close to there.
Yeah. I was in Iraq. I was in the army. I was deployed. I was overseas, and at that particular time, I would do my duties during the day, and when I got free time in the evening, I'd go and get on the internet and surf. I'd call my wife at the time and call my family, but then that's been the rest of the evening. Just surfing the internet and trying to find something to occupy my time. And that's when I ran into you on a set of forums and gaming forums where independent game developers work together and make games and shit. And we started talking about a project. Well, it was your project, right? Star Trek Adventures. You want to talk a little bit about what that was and all that?
Well, I had been a lifelong Star Trek fan, like many other people the world over, for all my life. And I also was a video game fanatic, and I always enjoyed video games, but there was always something lacking in the Star Trek world of video games. Most of them were made by designers that was trying to make it action-type games or like a Star Wars feel and stuff. And only 2 games ever really got my attention, and they were the ones by Interplay. That was the 25th anniversary games that put Star Trek into like a role-play feeling type scenario where you could actually role-play as the characters.
It was a point-and-click adventure game
yes.
style. What were the names of the? One of them was Star Trek: The 25th Anniversary or something, and the other one was what? What were they?
Well, they were produced by Interplay in the mid '90s. One of them was Star Trek 25th Anniversary. The other one was Star Trek Judgment Rights.
Judgment Rights, that's right.
Yeah, and they both used the same point and click style interface that allowed you to basically, take the roles of and play them like that versus shoot them up style games.
Right. Well, you approached me. I don't exactly remember how we bumped into each other online, but long story short, you said, "Hey, I'm working on this thing, and you want basically." And so I said, "Yeah," and I started making the art for you and helping you a little bit with the programming and just doing whatever I could. And we had another guy that was working with us, Tony. He did a lot of our rendering, our 3D animations and modeling and rendering. But it was just a little simple thing that we worked on for a while. And it was a little point and click. The original project was to, I think, take old episodes of the original series. I can't remember, the City on the Edge of the Forever and episodes like that, and Arena, and turn those into little small point and click adventure games for people to play. and we did that for a while, but unfortunately things happened and we weren't able to finish it. But that James, that's something. We got back together after that, and we tried to do another Star Trek point and click adventure game, but we just haven't been able to nail it down. Although I gotta say, I do hope that at some point in the future we're able to find a crew or a team and complete a project like that, because I still kind of the Star Trek fan in me still wants to create a Star Trek adventure game, and I'm sure you probably still are looking for that too.
Well, what was fun about the whole project is as we got into it and, word of mouth kind of got out a little bit, I felt kind of bad that we wasn't able to fulfill the project because we actually generated a lot of interest in other people with little radio programs like this and little publications and stuff like that online that actually was very interested in that style of project. So it seems like the interest was out there, for the same type of desire I had in my heart to see track, back in the form of point and click adventure games. And it's just kind of like I said at the beginning of the program, like that. It's all those things in life that come in the way that stops things like that. And I think we had, your military service, another guy's marriage or divorce, my own, problems going on in life as well. Things just sometimes get in the way of projects like that. But hopefully we can see something come together again someday, because it really was a project that had potential in it, and it really was fun. But it was also one of those projects I learned a lot, what to do, what not to do in projects like that as well.
Well, yeah, and that was probably, the first quote unquote serious project I'd ever worked on. Or at least the biggest project, especially the most fun. And so that was a lot of fun. And it taught me a lot about working with other people and about the whole process of making a video game or just making something in general. But, it was you, getting back to it, it was you. Like, I'd kind of been a I wouldn't really say I was even a Star Trek fan at the time. I was definitely interested in Star Trek, and I'd watched a few episodes of The Next Generation growing up and things. But, I never, when you approached me, like, hey, I want to do the Star Trek thing. I think originally I was going to write the music. That's all I was going to do, but it evolved into more than that. I'm like, oh, yeah, Star Trek music would be really fun to write. So I, kind of felt obligated. Well, if I'm going to be working on this original series project, I need to refresh my knowledge on the original series. So I started watching episodes and looking it up, and I fell in love right away. With the original series, and it was kind of all thanks to you. I don't think if I'd ever met you, I'd be as big into Star Trek, and I don't think I'd be who I am now if I hadn't met you. Not to get all sentimental or anything, but those couple of years, or that year or so, we worked together really closely. I don't get those days. Those were good days, man.
I had it was some of the best experiences my life as well, because it was interesting to find someone else to share my passion with. And so that it's amazing, something as old and iconic as Star Trek, that you may have seen some of the later Star Treks, but you didn't really have appreciation for what had come before. And it's so neat sometimes to take another generation of people and bring them into that, and to help them see what it was that made the things so special, and some people don't realize, just the lush history that this, series has had, and the impact that all the various series has had on, people's lives.
Yeah, and Leonard Nimoy, like I said, he, I don't know. A lot of people don't. I mean, I once I started getting into Star Trek and started working with you on that project, I started. Once I became a fan of Trek, I just wanted to learn more and see more, and I wanted to absorb as much information about it as possible. So I started reading, William Shatner's books and Leonard Nimoy's books, and started listening and watching the deleted scenes and bloopers on YouTube and all that kind of stuff, and reading articles about them. And there's a lot of I learned, actually, I didn't know this prior to all of my research, but Leonard Nimoy is the Vulcan greeting, the thing with the V with your finger. I mean, this is a podcast, you can't see it, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Nimoy, that was created by Nimoy. That wasn't in the script, or that wasn't Leonard came up with that.
Yeah, he actually did quite a few improvs like that ended up making it onto the show. Um, that itself was actually originally originated from a Jewish religious ceremony.
Yeah, it was a ceremony he saw. Like he went to some sort of religious deal with his father when he was a kid, and if I remember correctly, I don't remember very well, but something. And you can look this up online. But like his father said, "Hey, don't look at all this," and he kept his head down, and then finally he just said, "No, screw it, I'm gonna look." And he looked, and he saw these guys like with their hands stretched out and making what we know now as the Vulcan hand greeting. And he did it on one of the episodes. I don't remember when it was born. I don't remember the episode it was born. People are going to shoot me for that. But yeah, and now it's
I
one of the
don't
most
remember
iconic hand gestures out there.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact name of the episode either. It is the first episode where he went back to his homeworld, and him and Kirk had to fight or whatever when he was supposed to be engaged or whatever to somebody there on his homeworld.
Well, we talk about like we're hyping it up a little bit. We're hyping Leonard Nimoy up, and everybody. Well, since he's only been gone now for just over about 24 hours or so, and everybody's quick to say how good of a man he was, and he was. I'm not taking anything away from him, but I don't think people really. I want to, at least from my perspective, as much as I can. I want people to really understand why it's such a big deal. At least to people like me and you, it's such a big deal that he's passed. I feel like I never met him. You did, and you can talk about that in a little bit. But I when I learned that he died, there was like immediately a sense of like voidness, a vacancy, like an emptiness inside me. I didn't cry or anything. It didn't like destroy me, but I just felt really sad. And I feel like, and I thought about that some more today, and I think the reason is when someone like that dies, that they're no longer with us. They're no longer producing content, right? The videos you see on YouTube and the movies that he's made, and the books that he's written, and all of that, and the songs that he's performed, all of that stuff. That's all it'll ever be now. There will never be another thing produced by Leonard Nimoy. So we've gotten as much content as we're going to get out of him, and I've enjoyed everything I've seen of it.
Well, and of all that, I mean, you've got 50 years, nearly 50 years of playing the same character, 10 movies, 3 TV series, that he's attached the same character to. You think that would be enough content, but I'm screaming. We'd be screaming for more. I mean, if we would want another 50 years.
Right.
I think it's really odd when people like this dude died, as celebrities and people that's been a part of our childhood. I think that's I think a lot of it like that stuff. A lot of these things are attached to our childhood. They're attached to important times of our lives or whatever like that, and Star Trek is one of those phenomenons that is just timeless, and its message is timeless. And I was actually talking to you about this the other day before I agreed to come onto the show, and about the very fact that Star Trek is very relevant still today, and I think that's why Leonard Nimoy is going to be remembered forever, because what he stood for and what the show that he appeared in so much and stood for like that is still a very timeless thing today and has very much relevance for us now. And that's a vision of a future, especially in a present that the future looks very uncertain.
Yeah. Well, Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future, and I was gonna say it hasn't been far off from the truth, but in retrospect, thinking back on that, we've actually, like, we as in society, humanity, have created or are creating the future or a similar future that Roddenberry envisioned. I mean, it goes without saying, so much modern technology was inspired by ideas in Gene Roddenberry and his friend's head. That's amazing. It's touched, like, people grew up watching Star Trek, and now they're doctors because Spock was their favorite, or they're scientists because Spock was their favorite character on Star Trek. And that's rare. You know what I mean? That's deep.
Well, And originally, Roddenberry went to NASA to get a lot of the information and stuff of what could the future be like, or what's in development that where we would have. But it's funny how that has turned around. That some of the inventions and stuff from NASA actually became later inspired by Star Trek, and even some of the technology that might get us to Mars and stuff like that, that it's in the works right now, is actually developed and designed off of ideas and concepts that was portrayed in Star Trek later.
Like I said earlier, you had a chance to meet Leonard Nimoy on an occasion or two. You've told me the story, I think, before, but it's been a long time, and I want to hear it again. You mind sharing?
I got to meet him on two occasions. One was in the early '90s, mid '90s, something like that stuff, in Dallas. It may have been somewhere around there like that. It was in Dallas, Texas, at a convention, and then I also got to meet both him and Mr. Shatner in a convention in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Didn't you meet Shatner in the urinal?
Correct.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm sure everyone's going to want to hear that story when they. Mr. Shatner. Okay, I had gone to the convention. I had heard Mr. Shatner speak, and Mr. Nimoy. They gave a really wonderful presentation on stage, and I went to the restroom, and I'm standing there, and some guy's up in front of me at the urinal, and I'm sitting there. He's there forever, and I'm like, I'm really needing to go, and I'm wanting to get back and listen to the other celebrities and all this stuff, and so I make some kind of like impatient comment, like take you all day there, buddy, or something. Got problems there, buddy, whatever. The guy turns around and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, man. I whatever, stuff, sorry, man. I know you when you gotta go, you gotta go. I didn't mean to hold you up." And I looked up, and I was face to face with the great one and only Mr. William Shatner.
And that was the only thing you said to him was, "Hey, are you about done yet?"
You out there, down there, yeah, buddy. and I mean, what do you say at that point? Man, I love you, or you're great, or whatever, to a guy standing in the urinal.
Yeah, you've pretty much just gotta walk away at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
See, and at least you got to meet him, though. With Leonard Nimoy, and you didn't get a chance to talk to him, though, did you? You just.
I did at the Dallas convention. I was much younger then at the time. I was in my teens, still living at home. My parents had actually took me at Dallas, all the way to Dallas, just to see him, because that was the closest he had come in quite a while to us. And I actually got to visit with him for a few minutes during the autograph session. I mean, so did 20,000 other people, but he was very gracious and wasn't like trying. The staff was trying to rush people through, of course, but he was very gracious and wanted to actually take a time to say where you from, or how long you been a fan, or this or that. So wanted to at least be as personal as he could, even if it was just a few seconds with each person, and that's much appreciated for somebody of his status and stuff.
You feel like you've been to a few conventions, and you feel like some of the guys there, some of the celebs or whatever, they just feel like they don't really want to be there. They're just kind of doing it, maybe for the money, or maybe for just to look good or whatever. But they don't they seem kind of standoffish. It's always really nice to meet that guy who you've looked up to, and he's actually genuinely really cool and nice to talk to.
Well, my experience is, I have been to a lot of them, and I've seen a lot of ones just like you were talking about. But for most of the cast of the Star Trek series, and that includes like all the television series as a whole, most of those guys are really some of the most fantastic people you will ever meet, that actually has a true love for the fans and understands, that it's the fan base that has, gave them, the generations of work that they've actually had. And I found that to be true from almost every Star Trek actor that I have ever seen at a convention. It's an amazing thing, or whatever like that, to actually see them love the fans back as much as we love them. Yeah.
Right. And when you think about people who play characters on a TV show, or in a in a series of movies or trilogies or whatever, someone who's invested in a character, and like for example, just Spock, uh, those actors tend to like you get typecasted, I guess, as an actor, or at least a lot of them tend to, and they start to regret that role of that character. Like Will Wheaton comes to mind, the guy who plays Wesley Crusher in The Next Generation. When he was a teenager playing that role. But I've read his books and I've followed his blogs and things like that recently and over the years, and I've been reading up, and I've learned that he is one of the guys who he came to despise Wesley Crusher because people didn't like Wesley, and in turn they didn't like him, and so he completely just turned his back on the role for a long time. But Leonard Nimoy, I can imagine, was feeling a lot of the same stress. Now, granted, Leonard Nimoy was a much older actor than Will was at the time, so he's had a lot more experience. And the funny thing is, I'm gonna bring this full circle in a minute, but Leonard Nimoy had a pretty successful acting career prior to Star Trek, but not very many people can name anything else that Leonard Nimoy has ever done. Anybody under the age of 50, anyway, can name anything else Leonard Nimoy has ever done prior to Star Trek, because once he did Spock, like that's all he ever did, and until he died. But no, he was all, in fact, he wrote a book called I Am Not Spock, and people thought he was lashing out and be like, no, I hate the character and blah, 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 and I'm disassociating myself with him, but he really wasn't. It was a misconception. And so just to show how like into the fans he was and how in tune with them he was, and wanted to connect with him, he wrote a follow-up book called I Am Spock in response to all the negativity that the first one got. And so that just shows you, he really did care about the fans a lot.
I could imagine that as an actor. I understand an actor's idea. They're wanting to have creativity. They're wanting to be known for many different roles and many different things. But at the same time, you take the look at it's a two-edged sword. You take the look at the careers of people like Mr. Nimoy and Mr. Shatner, and how many actors could actually say they had steady work for 5 decades?
Well, William Shatner, I think it's a kind of a joke now that he'll take any work that comes along. He's done literally everything from car commercial or from airline commercials to roast on Comedy Central. So William Shatner.
Miscongeniality. Yeah. The thing about Mr. Shatner is, people say that stuff like that about him, like that stuff, but I think he's the king at reinventing himself along the way, and which is also a key in the celebrity, status, world, like that stuff. And a lot of celebrities don't really know how to do that. Also, a lot of celebrities don't know how to laugh at themselves either. And I think like a lot of his over the top personality and stuff like that, I think he probably is like that a lot in real life like that, but I think a lot of it is that he's learned to roll with the punches, learned to laugh at himself, and reinvent himself along the way when he's had to, and done what he's had to do to keep a paycheck coming in and keep working. And that's actually amazing because it doesn't seem like a lot of the actors actually learn that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. William Shatner. I've read his books too. Like honestly, William Shatner is a man that I would love to meet for many reasons, but one reason being because I just want to know. I just want to see what he's like in person, because I've heard, like, you hear a lot of people say, "Oh, William Shatner's an asshole," but then you read his books or you see interviews and he seems like a pretty cool guy, and other people will be like, "No, Shatner's awesome," and then other people are like, "No, he's an asshole." So I really kind of just want to meet him for myself to find out, what I think. But I would now. You have met him, and granted, he was apologetic for taking up your urinal time, but
well, and I don't remember everything he said, but he was very comedic and stuff like that, just like you see him on the TV or the shows like you just talked about, So even in a situation like that, he was a pretty funny guy. Yeah.
The last movie of Star Trek, Into Darkness, wasn't it called?
Yes.
That was the last movie that we'll see Spock in ever.
Yes.
Or Nimoy,
Yes,
Nimoy as Spock, I should say.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what if they will do anything with his character or say that what something happened to his character or what they'll do in the future with that stuff. They could go all kinds of directions with that. Um, but the movie itself, I have enjoyed the new movies. The first one, in a very nostalgic way, because I feel the first one caught the spirit of the characters and everything a lot better than most remakes probably do. On the flip side, I felt like the movies in some ways was trying to put more special effects action into it, make it Star Wars feelish. And Star Trek wasn't always about that. Star Trek, a lot of times some of the movies were some of the most low budget films, but those were actually the biggest money makers, of the series too, because the story is more about heart and soul, about good morals and values. At the end of the day, it always ended with Kirk, Spock, McCoy talking about the morality of the things that they had just done or witnessed or whatever like that, and gave you a hope for the future, or the problem at hand. And I didn't feel that as much. I don't feel that has been captured as much in these new films. I like the first one. The second one on its own was a good movie. I believe that the addition of the Khan character really wasn't true to nature with the character, from the original series. You could have basically inserted any character into that role, called him anything else, and said he was engineered for some way, and the movie would have been just the same as if they had, said it was Khan or whatever like that. So that part of it there kind of bugged me because it just didn't live up to that, iconicness of the original series.
Yeah, well, like you mentioned, Star Trek, to me and to many, it's always just like the story and the morality and the philosophy of what the movie or the episode is trying to say is always it's always been the best thing, right? Like you didn't need all the special effects. You didn't need all that stuff in a Star Trek episode. In fact, like you said, many of the episodes that didn't have a lot of that were the best episodes. You were saying something. I interrupted you.
Well, no, we was talking about that. Star Trek 3, for example, probably had the lowest budget of all the Star Trek films, and it was actually the first film directed by Leonard Nimoy himself, and ended up being one of the most profitable as well. And that film had a very low budget, and even some of the sets if you look at certain ways, you could see the budget there. But the message in that film, it was the movie after Spock had died, and they were going to search for him, bring him back, and all that stuff. And even though the film was really low on budget, the story in there, what you would do for friendship, what friendship means to you, it was just so compelling that anybody could relate, and I think most all those old stories, and so that's what the original series excelled at. And they'll take it if we hadn't had the that the story and the characters and the morality from that wasn't so powerful, much stronger than the actual special effects. We wouldn't have had 5 more series and 10 more movies, to follow after that.
Yeah. Actually, that reminds me. Seth MacFarlane, I read this yesterday. After Leonard Nimoy, after he died, I saw this. Seth MacFarlane posted a tweet that said, "Leonard Nimoy brought us one of the greatest, noblest characters in the history of American storytelling. Someone find the Genesis planet." And I thought that was really cool. I retweeted that one because, like you were talking about, I guess for people who don't know, shame on you for one. But for two, like at the end of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, Spock dies, and he's resurrected in Star Trek III by being torpedoed onto a. It's still like he's torpedoed onto a Genesis, onto a planet, and then like the planet's rebirthed, and like everything on the planet is it's kind of weird how they did it, but it makes sense, if you buy into it. I imagine going out there into space and finding the Genesis planet, and Leonard's probably sitting there somewhere. smoking a pack of cigarettes or something. Um,
Yo, man, live long and prosper.
yeah, that's actually kind of sad though. He died from an illness. I don't remember the name of the illness, but it was an illness attributed to his smoking habits when he was younger.
Basically, it's a version of COPD. Is what his wife explained it as being. News reports was saying some other type of lung disease, but from articles I read from his wife, it was COPD, which is a chronic degeneration of the lungs brought on from smoking. Um, and it would be important to go ahead and say that you know because I'm sure Leonard would want it this way, like that and stuff, because he was quite honest when he came down with the illness, what he had, and he was quite honest about why he had it. So it seemed important that he wanted people, to be aware, and stuff, that hey, smoking can cause you problems later in life, and it's a bad thing for you. And he wasn't trying, wanting to hide that. He wanted people to know that, that was the result of it. Like that. Of course, the man was 83 years old. That some would argue that something would get you, no matter what. But he seemed, other than that, to have been a man in pretty good health or whatever like that and stuff. That may have had another 10 years or so.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's put a nod out that smoking's bad. Don't do it.
Right. Did you have anything else that you wanted to discuss or talk about, or anything to say on topic of Leonard Nimoy?
Just that I'm gonna always miss him, and I like I said, the work he did, this is never gonna be enough. But it's just the joy that he leaves behind, and well, you know what? I don't think we touched enough on that one little thing like that stuff. Is when we sometimes feel strange things when celebrities die, and it's like, we did know them, but we didn't know them,
Right.
and even meeting them a couple of times, like, I was fortunate enough to do, it's still not the same, it's not like, really knew the guy, stuff. But it is funny, the emptiness that you feel or whatever inside and stuff when this stuff happens and these people pass, and
Well,
it's kind of
James,
weird. Yeah.
I don't know if that's complete. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but if you think about it, a lot of these celebrities, people like Leonard Nimoy, we probably know him better. Well, we definitely know him better than he knows us. So in a sense, we do know him better. Yet he still goes above and beyond his way to do things for the fans. And he's always been there. He's always been at the convention, and he's always signed the autographs, and he's always come back and reprised the role. And whether it's in movies or voice acting in games or the animated series and things like that. And so if I could ever have had a chance to even say anything to him in person or over the phone or anything like that, or even a letter, what I would just simply say is, thanks for being there for all the people, for all the Star Trek nerds and all the geeks who geeked out over Spock and Kirk and all the cool Star Trek stuff and things we loved. He was, he supported us essentially, and he said, "Hey man, yeah, that's cool. Keep doing that." And so I just would like to say thank you, Leonard Nimoy.
And as far as a fan, wanting to give back in some way or to respect his memory or whatever, it is that you do or believe, the best thing is to take the message that Star Trek had, the message that the character Spock had. Even though Spock was human in the funeral episode, it was said that his soul was the most human of all,
Right.
And the best way to honor his memory like that and stuff is to take a look at Trek itself, at the vision of the future, the vision of hope for humanity. And as I said before, we won't get into politics, but you don't have to do much but turn on the news right now to just see that, we've done good in technology, but as a society and our political beliefs and everything else like that stuff, we've got a long ways to go, and and we really look know, to the future. And
Say that last part, that last sentence again. You cut out.
well, like you were talking about technology and how it had developed a lot along the lines of Star Trek. We've done good on that area, but when it comes to society, sociology, politics, stuff like that stuff, we've got a long ways to go to meet that goal, and to meet that vision. And we're living in a day and age that the future is really looking uncertain, and you turn the news on a lot of times, and a lot of the analysts says that we're mirroring the events of World War III and stuff like that. Stuff. Who knows? Like that stuff. But we need to take the look at the vision that Star Trek had, like that and stuff, and keep pushing forward. Those ideas, that philosophy, that mindset, and that belief, no matter how difficult the future looks. If anything, history shows us that one person can make a big difference. And look at what Mr. Roddenberry's vision gave us, and we can still have that future. It's not too late for us. So that's how we honor him, is to have that vision.
That's a good point. In fact, Spock said in Star Trek: the Wrath of Khan, he said the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. And so I think that's a kind of a good summary of what you just said there. And we should try to keep that kind of thing in mind, because we're all here together. We're all on the same rock, and we all ultimately kind of want the same thing. Well, most of us do. Some of us just want to kill other people and burn shit down. But most of us want to be good people, I think.
Well, one more thing on that note is Mr. Nimoy may not be with us any longer, but Star Trek is going to be living on, hopefully another good 50 years. And we were talking about how the times of the world and stuff like that. And when you look at, other things in the movies and stuff nowadays, superhero movies is just like the big thing, if you're a geek fanboy like that, you're having the time of your life with, all these movies coming out these days. But superhero movies came out in the 40s, and superhero comics came out in the 40s. That's when a lot of these characters was coming out, and that's when we were in war, war and stuff like that. It was very bad times in life, and these superheroes were created to give us hope, to give us a vision for the future. By the time Star Trek came along, we were in some uncertain times, and stuff there. It was that day's current vision for the future. And, now we're here again. Things are coming full circle. Star Trek and superheroes are making a comeback again. It's just to show the world just how much we actually truly need those visions, and above like superheroes and Star Trek and stuff like that. And it's mirroring the times now like that, with those things coming back. Those messages and visions are timeless and will never go away. And that's why Star Trek will always be with us.
Well said, James. Well said. I think that's a good note to leave out on. I want to thanks for coming on and talking to me. It's been a long time. I'm glad we got a chance to catch up and talk about some old memories and things.
This was really fun. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Yeah, no problem.
Kirk.
It's okay. Now, real quick though, before we go, look, I do want to have you back on the podcast, and because I want to talk about another thing we used to do back in the day, kind of like in between our Star Trek game making stuff. We played a little bit of Ultima Online. I don't know if anyone out there knows what that is, but some of you older gamers may definitely have heard of it before. And you're still into that, right?
Well, actually, I had gotten away from it for a good few years myself, but it's one of those video game series and iconic things that you never can truly get it out of your blood or out of your system. And so I went back to it to see what was going on with it. And I've been in the emulation side of it, free server side. And I went back to find out that the main community, Run UO, that had pretty much created the ability for players to have their own servers, had shut down and ended the project. And I was pretty sad about that. Then I found out some other projects have now started up, and it's actually breathed new life into the entire player-run server deal. And there's some exciting things going on there now.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you about that. We're gonna have to save it for another episode though. But hey, if you guys want to hear more about that, make sure you check back in with us. Follow me on Twitter if you'd like. You'll get all the updates when we release the podcast. It's at the Technobabble. That's Technobabble's Twitter. You can also follow my personal Twitter. It's at Captain Kirk SC2. And James, you got any shout outs you want to throw out there?
No, just keep on tracking.
All right, well said. Now I am Captain Kirk. At least that's what people call me. However, it was my very good first officer, Mr. Spock, that said, and I want to leave this with you: live long and prosper, everyone. Thank you for listening.